Hello and welcome to
Hello.
another interesting episode of Winds of Change Education. Today, I have with me a dynamic person who has wonderful people skills. He is the Dean of MGIMS. He has that rare distinction of studying in this college and then heading it today. After his PG in pathology, he did his DNB and went on to do his PhD from Sweden. He has done numerous research projects. He has over 160 research papers published in various national and international journals. A very warm welcome to the Dean of the first rural hospital in India, Dr. Nitin Gagne. Welcome, sir.
Good evening.
Sir, the first question that I'll be asking you, why did you choose to become a doctor? Then you have gone into the administrative field. What was that motivation? First to become a doctor and then to go to the administrative position.
Yeah, probably you forgot to mention that I was born in this hospital only in 1961.
Okay.
Yeah. And the medical college was established in 1969.
Mm-hmm.
So the entire development of medical college occurred before me.
Okay.
Actually, I was good in mathematics, not that good in biology. But
Mm-hmm.
if you remember that during those days, we did not have any entrance exam. So
Okay.
the medical admission and engineering admissions were based on marks which you obtained in 12th class.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, I got less marks in engineering and less marks in mathematics and more marks in biology.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, I preferred to go to medical college.
Mm-hmm.
And I had that atmosphere around me, which prompted me that medical education is one of the better fields than engineering at that particular period of time.
At that point. So we are talking about 1978 when you got your admission. So God willed that you go and become a doctor. It was His will, definitely.
Yeah, not an engineer.
Not an engineer. Okay.
So, yeah, please.
Yeah. So during this last 2 years, everything is changing. But when the coronavirus actually came to the country, that lockdown happened March 2020, what were your thoughts on this?
Actually, in March, the cases started appearing in India, right? So at that time, we hardly had any cases in Wardha district. So there was a lot of misconception at that time.
Okay.
How the virus spreads, how the disease occurs, why there is so much infectivity. There were a lot of questions. Mm-hmm. And there were hardly any answers because the disease is a new disease. It is a newly diagnosed entity. Mm-hmm. So because of misconception, there were a lot of different views by public health specialists, the clinicians, patients, everybody was confused. Mm-hmm. So that was a very difficult time. But over a period of time, we started to understanding about the disease. And now we are in a position where we are being able to manage it better. So initial period was a very
difficult phase
because we were not knowing much about the disease.
Much about the disease. So after the outbreak, then slowly everyone came to know more about the disease and the management also started improving. Doctors also had an idea what to do, how to do. People also came to know how infectious this disease was. You are heading a college. It's not about one or two people. You have a whole college to deal with. How did you prepare your college to deal with such an emergency?
Yeah, initially, the first thing which we were asked by the district administration is to prepare a 200-bedded facility, which is separate from the original hospital, and it should be having oxygen facility.
Okay.
So you know that in Sevagram we have different blocks. So it was easier for us to create a 200-bedded facility because we allotted a separate block for COVID patients.
Okay.
So that was taken care of. Next thing which happened was, the diagnosis was that time based on RT-PCR. Yeah, that time the antigen tests were not there. Even today, the antigen tests are not that specific for virus as compared to RT-PCR. So the next step was to establish a RT-PCR laboratory. Now, many of us know about PCR technology, but the problem is there were challenges.
Okay.
Because the first time, getting the kits, the initial kits were having a lot of problems. There were a lot of inconclusive results, and we were quite apprehensive.
Okay.
So when we gave the first positive in Wardha district, she was from an Adivasi family.
Okay.
And so she died, and because of some respiratory complaints. And when she was tested, she was found to be RT-PCR positive for COVID.
Okay.
But there were a lot of questions in public as well as in media that if the disease is so infective, why the other relatives did not get any infection? So there were a lot of questions. There were even threats of going to parliament, assembly, and everything. So we were also at that particular period of time, we were also not knowing. We were also not able to answer those questions. But later on, now we know that it is possible that a person may become diseased, but he may not transmit the infection. But that is a recent knowledge. At that particular period of time, we had a lot of problems. Then later on, that this disease, the patients are isolated from their relatives. They don't, they cannot talk with the relatives. Many of them do not have mobiles, so they cannot communicate with the relatives. So communication problems were there. So that created a lot of quite apprehension among the relatives that what we are exactly doing with the patient. So then starting a helpline was another challenge, because to create a helpline, to make it available to the patient relatives, then to give the information about the patient to the relatives, it has a lot of challenges. So that was another issue. In the later part, the second phase, there was, as everybody knows, there was shortage of beds, shortage of oxygen, drugs. So that was another problem. So these are different issues which we had to deal with during the entire last 1.5 years.
Yeah. So when patients come, initial phases, when people were not having much idea about the disease, they started questioning how can one person die with this virus and the other person, because you all also didn't have a clear answer at that point of time. It took time for you all to research into it and find out what is the exact reason why one person is dying, the other person is not getting infected. And secondly, it's very easy to say from the outside, start a helpline. It is not that easy, because the backstage infrastructure has to be in place, the manpower has to be in place, the whole setup has to be done, and everything was actually very sudden. It didn't give anyone any time to think,
to build up the infrastructure.
To build the infrastructure. That was one major problem of this disease. It was very, very sudden, and it spread also very. So you had a lot of work to do at the back end to make sure that these patients who were coming were given the best possible care. Now, you mentioned that you had a 200-bedded separate COVID unit prepared. Now, what is the bed capacity of your hospital?
The total bed capacity is 1,000. So initially we kept 200, but later on in the second phase, we had to increase the number of beds for COVID patient to 400. But we also have non-COVID. We did not stop non-COVID facility. We continued with non-COVID workers.
Non-COVID. So it's a whole lot of management to be done. On one side, you have to take care of the COVID patients, have a separate facility for them, have everything separate for them, and take care of their needs, whatever they are needing. And at the same time, you had to open your hospital, because non-COVID patients also needed treatment,
Yeah,
and you could
that's
not stop. You could not stop
yeah.
that. So you had to continue. So it was quite a challenging time for you for the last one and
Yeah.
a half year.
We did not sleep
You did not
properly.
sleep. Yes, yes. You could not sleep properly because there were every single day brought some new challenge.
No
Every
challenge,
single
right?
day had some new type. And these
Yeah,
are not something which you have faced earlier in your life. It is
yeah, that's
all on the go. You all had to think on your feet and find out what best can be done. It
yeah.
was really a tough job to do. Now, then suddenly in May 2020, there were doctor shortage in Mumbai, and you all were requested to send some of your doctors there to help them out. What was your fear at that time? Because in your hospital, everything is in your control. You know how things are and how to protect. But when you are sending children outside, then what were your fears?
Yeah, on 12th of May last year, I received a call from our Director Medical Education Research, Government of Maharashtra, that they require doctors to serve in Mumbai because in Mumbai had lot many cases and number of doctors who were willing to serve in COVID, because that time lot of apprehension was there. So not many doctors were also willing to
Willing.
volunteer for that. So that was another issue. So we had a meeting between management and we decided that we must send because this is the time where our services are required. So we called our students, we had a discussion with them, and all of them were very willing because even they did not know what is the actual situation. Yeah. So most of them were willing, but when they finally went to that hospital, they were given very good facilities. They have a 5-star hotel to stay. You know that everyone had an individual room. There was no one to talk with. The food was used to be given in parcel, no common facility. So then they also started developing apprehension, especially the girls. And the girls started contacting their parents. And their parents started contacting me that now you are their father. Yeah, you are their father now you are responsible for that. So it had a lot of problems, but what we did is we created a WhatsApp group of those 45 students, and I was there. And whatever problems they had, they used to send me a message and we used to take care of that. One of the residents developed diarrhea. Diarrhea is one of the symptoms of COVID.
Okay.
So yeah, so then everybody was apprehensive. He contacted his faculty, senior faculty in the department. They were quite apprehensive. But then after 1 or 2 days, he became normal. So fortunately, nobody suffered because of the infection, but they were taken good care of. And now we know that COVID ward with proper precaution is probably the safest place in the world to work. Yeah, that's true. If you are taking proper precaution, there is no problem.
No problem. But that only a doctor can say. You tell a common person to go and stand in that COVID ward, they will
that is different.
feel so frightened. Even if you tell them that we are giving you the best precaution, PPE, double gloves and everything, it is the mental strength that a doctor has, which helps them day in and out to go inside that ward. It's not that easy for a person who is not mentally that strong. Maybe you can give all the facility, but that mental strength that each individual has to have. So you were responsible and you took care of them, and you use technology. The WhatsApp group makes you feel that someone is there whom I can reach out. I can talk to, I can tell my problem and get it solved. So that was very important. That feeling of being taken care of, that is very, very important. As the head of the institute, if I know that the child feels that yes, I can reach you, I can tell you, that solves, I think so, half of the problem, because they know someone is there to look out for me. That is very important. That's very important. Now the first wave is over. Second wave is over. We are all worried about the third wave. Now, what can people do to protect themselves, because for so many days they are inside, and all the businesses are at a standstill. So everyone is eager to get back to work, everyone is eager to go out, and still there is that third wave sitting on their head. Everyone knows that someday or the other that will hit. So what can people do to protect themselves?
See, during first wave, we hardly had any information about the disease. So that was our problem. In the second wave, the number almost tripled. So we had a huge number of patients who were required to have indoor facilities, hospital facilities. Now we are prepared to take care of that. But when you are talking about third wave, we are basically talking about people who were not previously infected, because reinfection is not that common in the disease.
Okay.
You have patients of reinfection, but that is not common. Then you have people who are vaccinated. So most of the people who are vaccinated, usually most of the vaccines have a 90% efficacy. That means only 10% may have a breakthrough infection, and those breakthrough infections are also not that severe. So death is not common, the ICU management is not required. So you have group of people who are previously infected and also vaccinated, and you have group of people who are neither vaccinated, neither have been previously infected. And these people are likely to get infected at a particular period of time. And once that infection starts growing in numbers, then it will again become unmanageable. Problem is, at present we are not vaccinating pediatric population. There are plans to vaccinate between 12 to 18 age year groups, but you know that below 12 is also a significant number of population. And they are school-going children, and they don't. You cannot tell them to maintain physical distancing. You cannot tell them to wear mask all the time. Especially very young people, children do not wear mask. You need to tell them. So these are the people who are likely to get most infected, because they have not been previously vaccinated, or probably they did not have any infection also, because they were staying inside the home. So unless and until somebody from home got infected, there were less chances of getting them contact with the disease, contact with the virus. So this is the problem. That's why they are predicting that the pediatric population will be affected much more in the third population. Another problem is pediatric population. If the child gets infected, you cannot separate it from parents. It becomes very difficult. So that is another issue. The infection will carry to the parents. Parents will carry it to outside. So that is the problem.
So these are practical problems that everyone needs to keep in mind. That those who are vaccinated, those who have previously got the infection, chances of getting reinfection is much less for them. But there is a lot of people out there who have not been vaccinated. There are this whole pediatric group who have not been vaccinated. So if it spreads, then these two group of people are the most likely, and they should take due precaution now. They should take more precaution.
The most important thing, you continue to have a COVID appropriate behavior. That is maintaining the physical distancing, wearing mask when you are outside, in the with public at public places. Then sanitization. So these are some of the measures which can be easily taken. But problem is most of us are not following these measures, and that may create a problem.
Just as when the pandemic broke, there were many things, new things that you had to implement, or you had to purchase for the college, or you had to make it available to the doctors. What are those new things that you had to do during this pandemic?
Yeah. As I told you, the first thing was to create oxygen facility. We don't use individual oxygen cylinder for these patients, because the oxygen requirement is very high. So you should have a piped oxygen, centralized oxygen, and creation of that facility was one of the important part of the entire COVID management, that we should have a good oxygen facility
Supply.
which will provide for the patients. So we have a liquid oxygen cylinder tank, which is around 20,000 liters capacity. So that is a huge plant.
It's a huge plant. 20,000 liters capacity. It's a huge plant. Yes.
Then we also have, the good thing is we have many research projects. So when we started working for viral disease laboratory, everything was already available with our research projects.
Okay.
So that becomes very easy when you are starting a new facility. So creation of laboratory was not a problem. But problem is we had very minimum number of instruments. The projects usually require very smaller instrument. So that was another problem. But the district administration, I must say, they helped us a lot. They gave us automatic extractors, PCR machines. So that helped us in creating a laboratory which can cater large number of tests. Initially, for us, even 150 tests a day was a problem. We were not ready to do that also. But now we are doing almost 1,000 tests without any problem. And recently we have crossed almost 100,000 tests, COVID tests, RT-PCR.
100,000 RT-PCR. Yeah, because when a hospital is running, that time you have the infrastructure required for the hospital, the load that comes on the hospital. But in a pandemic situation like this, suddenly you have to step up and everything needs to be made available at a huge scale. Like from 150 that you were saying that you were struggling today, 1,000 you can give it at a click of a button. That is because at the back end you made those things available, made those adjustments. Oxygen supply was a big issue that you could solve, you could get it down. But everything takes time. You can't get up one day early in the morning and say, today I need
especially in pandemic, because of lot of restrictions were there. So getting the supplies, getting the instruments, the logistic, getting the labor, everything was a problem.
Because it was a very unprecedented scenario. No one knew, no one could guide, no one could tell that it is going to get over by this time. No one could say that next day, tomorrow you will have this problem. Every single day something was coming up, and every single day you needed to solve that to go to the next day. So but at the end of it, you all upgraded your facilities, and now if there is a need, you can make those things available.
Yes, definitely.
In a situation like this, who should be protected the most? The doctors, the nurses, healthcare workers, patients, workers, students? Who should be protected?
Protected means vaccinated.
Vaccinated first.
So ideally, it should be the doctors, because they are going to face the patients. But I have told you already that if you take all proper precautions, the chances of infection are very low. Now we understand that those who have been taking proper precautions, even working in ICU, don't get infected. So my first priority will be always patients who are comorbid. Because
patients who are with
comorbid means having other diseases. So these patients are more susceptible to have a severe infection and mortality. So that should be the priority. Those person should be more important as far as preventing the death is concerned.
Rest of them should take proper precaution, but these patients who are coming are the ones who
comorbid should be first vaccinated.
Comorbid patients are the ones who should be protected, because their death rate is very high. Spoken like a true leader, that first patient comes first and then the rest. Because
if you ask we have observed. No.
If you ask a common person, they will say, no, doctors and nurses and healthcare workers first.
Yeah.
We always say
But if
that.
you take precautions, you take precautions, the disease, you can't prevent the disease.
What you're saying is absolutely
Prevent
correct, because
the
you are
disease
coming
transmission.
you have come from a position where you are doing it day in and out. That's why that confidence that yes, you can take precaution. That's a very interesting insight that I have got. Now, there are many people whom we call the unsung heroes. Like when we are talking about COVID, we don't talk about them, but they are a very, very important part in this whole COVID duty. Whom do you think should we call the unsung heroes?
Yeah, the doctors and nurses have got all the credit because they are actually frontline workers. But the sanitation workers, the biomedical waste management. So these are the persons, they have been very prone, even in spite of taking precautions, they are very prone for getting infected, and they are hardly getting any credit. Even that there are some schemes which is for death due to death of the workers, healthcare workers because of COVID. But in those schemes also, sanitary workers are not covered. Because it is thought that sanitary workers cannot get infected, but they have done excellent work. All the wards, that they were being used so much, but in spite of that, they took care that they remained clean as far as possible. It's very difficult to work with a PPE kit and do a physical work like cleaning the toilets. It takes a lot of
efforts.
Then those who handle dead bodies. I know that they had you cannot imagine the conditions they worked. They were carrying dead bodies. There were not enough ambulances to carry those dead bodies. They were sitting in PPE kits, carrying those dead bodies to the crematorium. They have worked very hard. Then Ashas, that the healthcare workers who work in the field, and they also been exposed to the disease, and they have done excellent work. And police administration also, I must appreciate. So these are 4-5 group of peoples who have not been that
applauded for the work that
appreciated, applauded because of their work.
For the work. Yes, the sanitary workers, yes, we should, the whole COVID ward needed to be sanitized every now and then, and they have kept on doing the cleanliness of all the parts, including the toilets, needed to be done by
because it was, what patient means. You had 2 groups of patient of COVID inside the ward. One who were being isolated because of some comorbidity. They may not be requiring oxygen. Then you had patients who were requiring oxygen, and they were quite serious. So those patients who were not serious, they were not having any problem. So what they used to do is they used to take a video of everything. So if something is not clean, if the bedsheet is not clean, they used to make it viral. So it created a lot of
pressure
pressure on us. And these sanitary workers, we knew that under what condition they used to work. So it was really problematic for us to even ask them to go and repeatedly go inside the ward and work. So it was right.
Actually, we have this habit of always pointing out the mistake, but we never go out to appreciate them. If there is something dirty, you will be making a video and making it viral, saying that, see, this is so dirty, without thinking that 5 days or 6 days that it was clean. Did I appreciate that? Did I say, yes, you have done a good work? And that's the reason even social media, I feel that negativity sells very well. You'll find negative news much more. than the
Yeah.
positive news. Yes,
Correct.
for the first time I'm hearing from you about the sanitation workers, about the biomedical waste, those who are disposing. I am yet to see people come out and appreciate them. Yes, doctors and nurses have done a wonderful work. They are appreciated, and it's very good that they were appreciated. But there are other people too who are doing this work. It's a whole chain. The doctor prescribes the medicine, checks out whether it's needed or not. The nurse is administrating the medicine, but the sanitation is needed. You need the
Yeah.
sanitary workers. All these PP kits that have been used, all the things that have been used that needs to go to biomedical waste facilities, and as per your norms, you will be disposing it off. But then there are people who are going to do that, so they also need to be appreciated, and especially those people who were handling the dead bodies. One, handling a dead body, wearing that PPE kit and staying so long to take the bodies to the crematorium. And the second thing is when the first wave, second wave, number of deaths. You know,
Yeah.
in a normal situation, in a few days you see a few dead bodies, it is okay. But in a pandemic like this, when day in and out so many patients are dying in a hospital, and that person is carrying, even he gets affected at the end of the day. He's a human
Yeah.
after all. So
That's
he is very strong, he is doing that, but that doesn't mean he doesn't get affected. He does get affected when he has to do this for a long time. These are
yeah.
the people who have helped us, and they definitely need to be applauded for what they are doing, because
Yeah.
they make the chain complete. What the doctors and nurses start, they make the chain complete to
Yeah.
make sure that the people who were well goes back home, and the people who did not make it through to go to the crematorium, till the crematorium. Actually, the journey starts from the hospital and ends in the hospital only. So a
Yeah.
child who is born is during this time, I'm definite. There must be children who were born of
Yeah. Yeah. To
COVID
COVID
mothers
positive mother.
also.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So it
we
is
created
a separate
we
ward.
created a ward. No, no, no. We
Mhm.
created a small operation theater inside the COVID ward for
A
these
small
mothers.
operation theater inside the
Yeah.
COVID ward for these
Yeah.
mothers.
Yeah.
How much detailed planning needs to be done from outside? It is very easy to say, why didn't the doctors do this, or why this was not done? But somewhere down, I think so. This interview will be an eye opening to many people as to how much effort it takes, how much thought process it takes, and all the way down to create something. Because again, when the COVID patient goes down, definitely these wards are not needed, isn't
Yeah.
it?
No, no. The wards will be there. Other
Mm-hmm.
because that was originally surgical wards.
Okay,
So we
okay.
shifted our surgical patients to other wards. So
Mm-hmm.
surgical ward will be there. So
Okay. No, what I'm saying is that when people say, no, why can't you build new hospitals? Because building new
no.
hospital is okay, you can build it, but once the COVID wave goes down, then those hospitals again need to be
Yeah.
maintained. You can't
Yeah.
overnight build something and leave it. You need to build it and maintain it. So those are the things that is a real practical problems that people have to face. Now, why do you think that suddenly we see here in the news also and media also so much about shortage of beds, shortage of oxygen, medicines are not available? Why does this happen?
Actually, in first wave, the number of patients were not that high.
Mm-hmm.
So that time there was not so much shortage of oxygen and bed.
Mm-hmm.
In the second wave, what happened is the number were extremely high, almost 3 times the first wave.
Okay.
So number of bed requirement become also very high.
Mm-hmm.
Another problem is though we increased the number of beds, but we are not prepared for that onslaught.
Mm-hmm.
The problem which happened is most of these patients who came in second wave were having very low oxygen. They're coming with very low oxygen levels.
Mm-hmm.
So their requirement for ventilators and oxygen was very high. Ventilator also requires large amount of oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
Now the problem is you can have only fixed number of ventilators. You cannot have all beds on ventilator. Because ventilator management is something which is specialized. We require people who are trained in ventilator management. So not everybody can do ventilator management. So ventilator beds were limited. Patients who were requiring ventilator support was very high. And that, see, we did not have that much problem of oxygen bed and non-oxygen beds. We had beds which were non-oxygen, we had also had beds which were having oxygen facility, but the requirement was mainly for ventilator. And unfortunately, we did not have that much capacity, and we did not have that much manpower to support that ventilator. So that become an issue, because when a patient requires ventilator, you don't have any option. And almost all districts in the state as well as throughout India, the problem was with ventilator bed. So we're talking about lack of ventilator bed. Another thing which happened was because of ventilator support required a large amount of oxygen. So naturally, the oxygen were also not that much available. Yeah. And drugs, there was rampant use of some of the drugs which were not required. Like remdesivir was not required in all patients, but many of the private hospitals were taking benefit, and there was a feeling upon patient relatives that we must be, if my patient is suffering from COVID, he must be given remdesivir. So even if there was no requirement, still the patient relatives were also insisting on giving remdesivir. They were going around in the city to find where it is available. So they were black marketing. So all that became a problem. So it was improper use of oxygen, because in some of the hospitals they were giving high amount of oxygen which was not required. So that was also creating a lot of imbalance between supply and demand.
Actually, hospital is run by doctors, nurses, technicians. So these are manpower which can't be reproduced overnight. If you need a specialized person to run the ventilator, he needs a certain amount of time to study and then become a specialized person. Beds and other objects can be purchased. You might take
physical
some time.
Things can be taken care
Physical things can be manpower can't be produced overnight. It can't be. So there lied the problem, and as you have correctly pointed out, that some places the oxygen, since nowhere was it needed that much, no one had procured that much oxygen and kept, and when the patient number went very, very high, then it became very difficult to provide with that many beds. That led to all this, not getting beds. But here I'll ask one very important question. See, doctors are doing their best. Hospitals are trying to accommodate as many patients as possible. And there are certain people who are selling things in the black market. They are selling oxygen, they are selling medicine. There are enough evidence to show that doctors are being beaten, doctors are being abused in spite of putting so much effort. But I am yet to hear any black marketeer was caught and beaten by the public, or someone has spoken against them, or someone has thrashed them. Why are you selling this at such a high price? When someone is doing the work, they are getting beaten. When someone is doing something illegal, why is it that they are not caught and beaten?
Yeah, actually, this pandemic, this happens even in a normal situation, not in pandemic. Pandemic, it become somewhat exaggerated because there was, again, I'm telling you, the communication was not that efficiently done. You recall the patients were in ICU. They were not able to communicate with the relatives. The relatives were not able to find, because whatever amount of helplines you provide, you cannot provide entire information about patient status. So sometimes it used to happen that sometimes, and this is very unique. The patient suddenly goes in hypoxia, patient who is good. We call that a good, happy hypoxia. So patients were in a very good physical condition and they suddenly died because of cardiac arrest. So so the problem was there was some bit of lack of understanding, lack of communication. The reason for that is doctors were also overworked. They were not able to communicate as frequently with the relatives as it should have been done, because the numbers were huge, isn't it?
Numbers were huge.
In normal situation, only 1 or 2 patients are serious in the ICU. Then you go and tell to their relatives, you talk to the relatives. Relatives can go and see the patient. Relatives can go and talk with the patient. Some of the relatives stay with the patient. So they are knowing that this is the condition of my patient. In COVID, this was not happening. So that was the reason for many of the conflicts which occurred. As far as black marketing is concerned, it is an entirely different thing, because here the patient's relative is told that if you bring this thing, bring this medicine, your patient may survive. So in that condition, the patient's relative is obliged to him. You understand? He is obliged to the black marketer that whatever you do, you give me this medicine, my patient may survive, my relative may survive. So these are two different things. Here, they think that the doctors are responsible for the patient. Here, they think that they are responsible for the patient.
That they could not procure the required oxygen or required medicine. That's why the patient died.
So the blame goes on them.
Blame goes on them. That's why they don't see him. So now my last question to you is, once all this gets over, this pandemic gets over, what are you going to do?
The first thing is the academic programs are completely disrupted. Medical teaching cannot be only theoretical. You can have theoretical online teaching, but practical teaching, unless and until you touch the patient, unless and until you see the science clinically, is very difficult. So that is our first priority, to bring everything, all academic programs back on schedule. Because everything is delayed. Admissions are delayed, exams are delayed, the teaching programs are not going on properly. So that is our first priority. Second always has been my priority is research. During last year, we have not been able to submit the research proposal. The funding has become problematic because government also does not have funds for research. All the money is going for patient management. So that is another priority for us. And then the routine thing will come, inspections, assessment. So those are the things
that will be. So here I hear a dean speaking, who speaks first not of his personal requirements, but thinks why the children, how I can bring the children back to the academic atmosphere again, and not only online, but the practical education can start. Thank you so much for giving us a sneak peek into what goes into running such a big hospital, how you were managing in this COVID situation, and how you all are again prepared for the third wave, because now itself you all are calculating what might be needed, what way you can make sure that everything remains at hand and you can give the best possible care to the patients. This hospital, Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Medical Science, is a very well-known hospital, and in your capable hands, let it fly even higher. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.